Drove it into the show all dirty and announced our new Guinness World Record.
I started winning. In 2011 I broke 5 FIA and Guinness World Records, but I basically wanted to build my own car. I was inspired by Christian von Koenigsegg.
2 hypercar giants, 1 brutal stopwatch, a record that refuses to stay broken for long. For years,
these 2 hypercars make over 3,000 horsepower combined.
Koenigsegg and Rimac have traded the title in one of the hardest tests there is, 0 to 400 kilometers per hour, then straight back to 0. Rimac's electric Nevera R seemed to settle it at 25.79 seconds, only for Koenigsegg's Jesko Absolut to reclaim the record at 25.21, using nothing more than a software update. This isn't just about numbers. It's combustion versus electric. So how did Koenigsegg pull off the impossible? Let's find out. The fastest rivalry on Earth. To understand why 2 words mattered so much, you have to understand how long this particular fight has been going. The specific record at the center of this story, 0 to 400 kilometers per hour and back to 0, roughly 0 to 249 miles per hour and back, is one of the purest tests in the hypercar world. It rewards not just top speed, but acceleration, braking, and how a car manages all of that without losing control. It is, in short, a test of total mastery over a vehicle at the edge of what's physically possible. Unlike a simple top-speed run, which mostly rewards aerodynamics and raw power,
Koenigsegg topped their records with the new fastest 0 to 250 mile-an-hour time.
Over a long stretch of road, this specific test compresses everything that makes a hypercar difficult to engineer into a single, unforgiving window of time. There is nowhere to hide a weakness. A car with a strong engine but a soft brake system will lose time on the return trip. A car with excellent brakes but a hesitant launch will lose time before it even reaches top speed. That is why the record has stayed such a tight contest between just 2 manufacturers for years, rather than being open to whichever company simply builds the most powerful engine or the largest battery. Building the fastest car in a straight line and building the fastest car in this specific discipline are not quite the same challenge. The record has changed hands so many times in the last several years that keeping score has become part of the story itself. In September of 2019, Koenigsegg's Regera set the mark at 31.49 seconds, a plug-in hybrid.
We reset and improved on its record from 2019. A record in 2019 that the Regera took from the Regera RS.
Built around a single-gear transmission, unlike almost anything else on the road. It held that record for years, until Rimac's Nevera, a fully electric hypercar out of Croatia, took it in 2023, with a run of 29.94 seconds. Koenigsegg answered within months. Later that same year, the Regera reclaimed the record at 28.81 seconds. The pace of the rivalry only accelerated from there. In July of 2024, Koenigsegg's newer car, the Jesko Absolut, pushed the record down further, to 27.83 seconds. Then, in July of 2025, Rimac's upgraded Nevera R, with a new rear wing, a bigger diffuser, and an improved torque vectoring system, smashed that mark, running 0 to 249 and back in 25.79 seconds, a margin of more than 2 full seconds. In a discipline where records typically fall by tenths of a second, 2 seconds is close to an eternity.
We broke the world speed record for a production electric car.
It looked for a moment like Rimac had pulled decisively ahead. The Nevera R that set that July mark was not simply the standard Nevera with a different badge. Rimac's engineers had specifically reworked the car for exactly this kind of run. A new fixed rear wing and a larger diffuser to generate more downforce at speed, upgraded Michelin tires designed to put down power more effectively, and a refined torque vectoring system to manage grip across all 4 wheels during the most violent part of the launch. Rimac said the changes increased downforce by roughly 15% over the standard car. Paired with the Nevera R's 0 to 60 mph time of 1.66 seconds, the car arrived at Rimac's July test run, looking, by every available metric, like the more complete package. For about 3 weeks it was. That moment lasted less than a month. It helps to understand why this specific test carries so much weight in the hypercar world, rather than simpler measures like outright top speed. 0 to 249 mph and back to 0 asks a car to do 3 difficult things in sequence, under a single stopwatch. Launch hard enough to overcome its own weight and tire grip, without wasting a fraction of a second in wheel spin. Hold that acceleration curve all the way to a speed most cars never approach at all, and then stop just as efficiently, using brakes and aerodynamics to shed all of that speed again. A car can be the fastest in a straight line and still lose this contest if it can't manage the deceleration half of the run with equal precision. That combination, not raw speed alone, is what makes the record so difficult to hold on to, and why even small refinements can shift the result by whole seconds rather than tenths. It is also worth knowing a little about the company that started this particular chapter of the rivalry. Koenigsegg was founded in 1994 in Sweden, and today operates out of a former Swedish Air Force base, employing roughly 850 people.
The Koenigsegg Jesko Absolut has once again shown why it sits among the fastest production cars on the planet.
A relatively small operation by automotive industry standards, especially set against the scale of the manufacturers it regularly outperforms in these events. The company's earlier record-setting cars, including the Agera RS, had already established Koenigsegg as a serial record breaker well before the Regera entered this particular rivalry with Rimac in 2019. That scale comparison is worth sitting with for a moment longer. Rimac, meanwhile, has grown from Mate Rimac's original one-person garage project into a company employing thousands across its combined operations with Bugatti, backed by investment from Porsche and, more recently, a consortium that includes HOF Capital as part of a broader ownership transition announced in 2026. Two companies with such different scales, resources, and corporate structures trading the same record back and forth for 6 years running is, on its own, a fairly remarkable story. Proof that outright company size isn't what decides who wins this particular contest. Koenigsegg rewrites the record. On August 7th, Koenigsegg factory test driver Markus Lund climbed into the same Jesko Absolut that had set the brand's previous record back in 2024 and drove it to Örebro airfield. What happened next reset the record to 25.21 seconds. Half a second quicker than Rimac's Nevera R, and it came without a single hardware change to the car. Koenigsegg's engineers had spent the intervening weeks refining what they called Absolut Overdrive, updated software for the car's light-speed transmission, along with a new torque control system
And 737 pound-feet of torque when running on standard gasoline.
designed to manage the grip of the car's rear tires more precisely during launch. No new engine, no new aerodynamics, no new tires, just code, applied to a car that customers already owned, meaning owners of existing Jesko Absoluts would be able to receive the same performance gains through an update rather than a factory visit. The technical achievement is worth sitting with on its own terms, separate from the rivalry. The Jesko Absolut is powered by a 5-liter, twin-turbocharged V8, producing somewhere around 1,500 horsepower, sending all of that power through the rear wheels alone. The Nevera R, by contrast, is fully electric, drawing 2,107 horsepower from 4 separate motors, one at each wheel, giving it the kind of instant, all-wheel grip that combustion cars have historically struggled to match off the line. On paper, the electric all-wheel drive car should have had every advantage in a test built entirely around launching hard and stopping fast. That a rear-wheel drive car running on a combustion engine beat it anyway is what made Christian von Koenigsegg, the company's founder, call the achievement almost magical. Beating four-wheel drive electric cars in a straight line is almost magical and shows that truths can be rewritten, he said following the run. Alongside the record itself, Koenigsegg simultaneously set a new benchmark for the 0 to 250 mph sprint, completing it in 17.18 seconds.
The Swedish hypercar recently delivered an incredible quarter-mile performance, storming down the track in just 8.54 seconds.
A time not far off what some hypercars need just to reach half that speed. There is a detail in how Koenigsegg delivered this update that matters almost as much as the record itself. Because the gains came entirely from software, they were not locked to the single test car that ran at Örebro. Owners of existing Jesko Absoluts, already on the road, became eligible to receive the same Absolut overdrive update, meaning a customer car sitting in a garage could, in principle, be brought up to record-capable performance without ever visiting a Koenigsegg facility. That is a fundamentally different model from how most hypercar performance gains get delivered, and it is part of why Koenigsegg framed this specific record less as a one-off stunt and more as proof of what the platform could do at scale. Rimac refuses to stay down. Records like this one rarely get lost gracefully. Companies spend years and enormous sums chasing tenths of a second and losing a record they held for barely a month to a rival in front of the entire automotive press is the kind of moment that invites bitterness. Mate Rimac chose a different response entirely. Rimac posted a video to Instagram not long after Koenigsegg's run went public. In it, he addressed the loss directly, without hedging or excuses. "Must say I thought that the Nevera R record would stand longer," he said. "The R is a rocket ship with incredible acceleration." He paused, smiling, before adding the two words that would end up defining how this whole story got told afterward. "But I guess, game on." It is worth understanding who is saying this, and why it lands the way it does. Mate Rimac is not simply the head of one hypercar brand chasing another. Since Bugatti and Rimac merged into a single joint company, Rimac has served as chief executive of both, meaning the man responding to Koenigsegg's record is, in a very real sense, speaking for two of the biggest names in the entire hypercar industry at once. His congratulations to Koenigsegg were not a smaller player being gracious about losing to a giant. They came from someone who, at that exact moment, oversaw a combined portfolio that included Bugatti's own speed record history. That merger is itself worth a brief word of context, since it explains why a video about a Rimac-branded car ends up being framed, in headlines, as a response from Bugatti's CEO.
I'm Mate Rimac, founder and CEO of Rimac Automobili.
Porsche had already built a significant investment stake in Rimac's electric and battery technology over several years before the two companies' parent operations were folded together, with Mate Rimac taking the top job across the combined entity. The Nevera and Nevera R remain Rimac-branded cars, built by Rimac's own team, but the executive standing behind that August Instagram video carries responsibility for Bugatti's next moves as much as Rimac's, which is part of why his tone in defeat gets read as setting the standard for both brands at once, not just one of them. There is also a piece of Rimac's own background that makes his reaction less surprising than it might first appear. Born in Croatia in 1988, Rimac built his first electric car in a small garage, converting an old BMW E30, using improvised tools and whatever parts he could get his hands on. What began as a personal project grew into Rimac Automobili and eventually into a company respected enough to supply technology to Porsche, Hyundai, Aston Martin, and Bugatti itself, before folding into a shared company with the very brand it had once supplied. Someone who started in a garage, chasing a company that had already been building record-setting hypercars for years, tends to understand what it feels like to be on the chasing end of a rivalry. Losing a record to Koenigsegg, then getting straight back to work, fits a pattern that goes back to how Rimac's entire career started. That garage-to-boardroom arc also helps explain why Rimac's public tone toward Koenigsegg has stayed remarkably consistent across every swing of this rivalry, win or lose. In earlier rounds of the same back-and-forth, Rimac had publicly praised Koenigsegg's engineering even while trying to beat it, and Christian von Koenigsegg had done the same in reverse, crediting Rimac's electric powertrain work as genuinely pushing the entire industry forward. Neither company has, at any point in this multi-year exchange, treated the other's success as a threat to be dismissed rather than a benchmark to be matched. That pattern is part of what made the specific choice of "game on" feel less like a scripted marketing line and more like a continuation of something both men had already been saying, in different words, for years. Two visions of speed. Underneath the friendly tone of Rimac's response sits a genuine, serious divide in how these two companies are betting on the future of extreme performance. Koenigsegg has built its record-breaking reputation on combustion, on software refinement, and on a relatively small, focused engineering team, squeezing more and more performance out of an internal combustion platform much of the industry has already moved past. Winning this specific record with no hardware changes at all is, in some ways, the company's philosophy in miniature. Incremental, software-driven gains layered onto a fundamentally proven mechanical foundation. Rimac represents close to the opposite approach. The Nevera R's power comes entirely from batteries and electric motors, an approach that trades the mechanical simplicity of a single engine for 4 independently controlled motors, and a torque vectoring system capable of adjusting power to each wheel many times per second.
We are now competing straight against electrical motor torque control with a combustion engine.
Where Koenigsegg chases more from less, Rimac has largely chased more from more. Bigger battery packs, more motors, more instantaneous torque, betting that electric power delivery will eventually put every combustion hypercar out of reach entirely. Neither approach has definitively won this argument, and that is precisely what keeps the record changing hands. Every time one company pulls ahead, it does so by leaning further into its own philosophy rather than borrowing from the others. Koenigsegg didn't respond to Rimac's electric power by building an electric car of its own. It refined the software on an existing combustion platform. Rimac didn't respond to Koenigsegg's software gains by chasing incremental refinement. The Nevera R's answer was more raw power and better traction management. The rivalry, in other words, isn't really about which car is faster in isolation. It's a running argument about which underlying technology has more room left to grow, and neither side is anywhere close to running out of ideas. It is worth pointing out how unusual this dynamic actually is within the broader auto industry. Most manufacturer rivalries play out through marketing campaigns, lawsuits over trademarks and technology, or carefully worded statements from public relations teams designed to say as little as possible. Koenigsegg and Rimac have instead conducted almost the entire rivalry through actual runs on an actual airfield, verified by actual stopwatches, with both founders commenting directly and personally rather than routing every statement through a communications department. That transparency is part of why enthusiasts follow this particular record as closely as they do. There is very little distance between the engineering claim and the proof of it. The rematch is already coming. Koenigsegg did not treat its August reclaim as a final word, and neither, by his own account, does Rimac. In the same public comments where he described the record as almost magical, Christian von Koenigsegg pointed toward the company's all-wheel drive Gemera.
how fast and exciting that is. And then we have 9 gears, so you can cruise on the highway at very low RPM very comfortably.
A 4-seat hypercar rated at 2,300 horsepower as a potential future contender for the record, suggesting that if the rivalry continues, Koenigsegg may eventually meet Rimac's all-wheel drive approach on its own terms, rather than relying solely on the rear-wheel drive Jesko platform. That hint matters more than it might first seem. For the entire duration of this specific back and forth, Koenigsegg's side of the rivalry has been fought almost exclusively with rear-wheel drive combustion platforms, the Regera and the Jesko Absolut, going up against Rimac's all-wheel drive electric cars. Bringing the Nevera into the mix would represent Koenigsegg's first attempt at defending or reclaiming this specific record with a car that matches Rimac's drivetrain layout rather than working against it. Whether that happens, and whether it actually produces a faster time than the software-refined Jesko Absolut currently holds, remains an open question. But it signals that Koenigsegg sees more than one path to defending the record it currently holds. Rimac's own "Game On" was not just a gracious sign-off. It was, by his own framing, a promise that Rimac's engineers would already be back at work.
Front axle of the C2, I really like how it looks like with these capacitors here of the inverters. It looks a little bit like a V8 engine.
By the time the video finished uploading, given the pace of the last several years, a record that has changed hands 6 times since 2019, with several of those swings happening within months of each other, there is little reason to expect either side to sit still for long. History offers a reasonable guide to how quickly the next swing might come. 2 of the 6 handoffs in this rivalry's timeline happened within a single month of the previous record falling. Koenigsegg's August 2025 reclaim itself came less than 4 weeks after Rimac's July run, and the earlier 2023 swing between the Nevera and the Regera moved almost as fast. Judged against that pattern, there is a real possibility that whichever company answers next does so before the wider automotive press has even finished covering the record currently on the books. What makes this particular chapter of the rivalry worth remembering isn't just the half-second margin, or even the software-only nature of Koenigsegg's win. It's the tone Rimac chose to set immediately afterward. Public, specific, and entirely without the kind of corporate deflection that usually follows a lost record. 2 words did more to define this rivalry's character than either company's marketing department likely could have written on purpose. It is worth remembering, too, that neither company treats this record as the only measure of what they build. Koenigsegg continues to sell the Jesko in multiple configurations beyond the Absolut, and the Nevera represents an entirely different kind of bet, a 4-seat hypercar aimed at buyers who want extreme performance without giving up practicality. Rimac likewise continues to develop battery and electric drivetrain technology for outside manufacturers, alongside its own Nevera lineage, meaning the company's future isn't staked entirely on winning this one specific stopwatch contest. The record matters enormously to enthusiasts and to bragging rights, but it sits inside 2 much larger businesses, each pursuing its own broader vision for what a hypercar should be. For an audience watching from outside either factory, that broader context is easy to lose sight of in the excitement of a half-second margin. But it's part of why this rivalry has stayed healthy for as long as it has. Neither founder needs the other to fail for their own company to succeed. Koenigsegg selling Jeskos and building Neveras, and Rimac supplying electric technology across the industry while building Neveras, can both keep happening regardless of which name sits at the top of one specific leaderboard on any given month. 2 words. That's how this chapter ends. For now. Koenigsegg holds the record at 25.21 seconds, one with nothing but software and a driver willing to trust it. But 6 handoffs since 2019 have taught us one thing. Rimac's engineers are already back at work, chasing half a second that might already be gone by the time you finish watching this. Combustion versus electric. Software versus hardware. The real winner might just be how fast this rivalry keeps pushing both companies forward. Like this video if you want to see who breaks 25 seconds first. Subscribe for the rematch. Comment below, Team Koenigsegg or Team Rimac.